Hi, I'm Adam Prtichard, Assistant Curator of Paleontology at the Virginia Museum of Natural History, and I'm here with another tale of ancient life. For the month of July, I'm highlighting dinosaurs and the dinosaur treasures in the Virginia Museum of Natural History collections. And today I thought I'd bring out some of the things we have from the earliest days of the dinosaurs during the Triassic period, over 200 million years ago. I've talked about this time a little bit in past episodes in discussing the strange reptiles like the Tanitraculus, a little long-necked lizard-like animal that we have from Virginia, and Doswellia, a crocodile-like animal that we also know only from Virginian fossils. Unfortunately, as yet, we don't have any dinosaur bones discovered in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's something that I'd really like to change in the near future. Fingers crossed. But that doesn't mean the Virginia Museum of Natural History doesn't have some stories to tell about those earliest dinosaurs, because our collections go far beyond what the Commonwealth has produced. I thought I'd talk about a few of them right now. Now, when they first appear in the fossil record, dinosaurs are not the largest animals on the landscape. They're certainly not the most common animals on the landscape. Their remains and skeletons are very, very much treasured because they're so uncommon. But they seem to be doing quite a few different things. This is a cast skull of a dinosaur called Eoraptor, an animal known from rocks over 225 million years old, the Ischigualasto Formation of Argentina. This is during the late Triassic period. And Eoraptor is one of the oldest dinosaurs ever discovered. Now, as its name suggests, scientists originally thought Eoraptor was a predatory dinosaur, and it does have little recurved teeth. They have serrations on them, but some features of those actually more closely resemble later herbivorous dinosaurs, like the ancestors of the long-necked sauropod dinosaurs, which has led other paleontologists to believe that Eoraptor is actually kind of Catholic in its diet, an animal that's able to be an omnivore, eat whatever the heck it wanted. It was a two-legged animal, relatively short arms, long legs. It's lightly built, not much bigger than a small dog. I mean, you can see the skull of Eoraptor is just, it's not huge. Get my eye in its nose. There we go. Eoraptor kind of captures the smallness of most of the earliest dinosaurs that show up in the fossil record. These are animals that would have been easy prey for the large early crocodile relatives and other predators that existed on the South American Triassic landscape. It's a little more clear what an animal like Herresaurus did with its time when it was living in South America over 225 million years ago. It's from the same time, same place as Eoraptor, so there are multiple groups of dinosaurs living there at the same time. And Herresaurus has very distinctly carnivore teeth, recurved, serrated. They look a lot like the teeth of carnivorous dinosaurs that would exist for 150 million plus million years after Herresaurus lived. This is an animal, again, two-legged predator. This skull is from an animal that would have been about the size of a wolf. If you see a mounted Herresaurus skeleton in a museum, it was probably based on this specific animal. It was based on a complete skeleton that was fully reported on in the early 1990s. Although this Herresaurus would have been about the size of a wolf, there is more fragmentary material of animals that would have had skulls upwards of 2 feet long, and would have been more like 15 or so feet in length, more like a bear-sized critter. And one thing I love about dinosaurs is that if it was any other group of animals and you said, we've got a two-legged carnivorous creature with a massive skull full of serrated teeth that weighs several hundred pounds at least, and longer than a car. If it was any other group of animals, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. That's like just the biggest predatory animal we've ever heard of outside of like a polar bear. That's so huge. But with dinosaurs, you'd be like, yeah, okay. You sure it didn't get any bigger than that? That's how much dinosaurs skew the picture of like what reptiles could do. I absolutely love that. But the Virginia Museum of Natural History's treasures from the early days of the dinosaurs go beyond casts like the ones I've shown you. We have some real fossils, not from Virginia, but from a fossil site in the United Kingdom. These were collected in the 80s and 90s by former VMNH curator Dr. Nicholas Fraser. Dr. Fraser is a world-class expert on the evolution not only of reptiles throughout the Triassic period, but also just of what ecosystems looked like. He studies microvertebrates. You may remember a past episode where I discussed tiny bones of vertebrate animals that were found in an 800,000-year-old cave in Cumberland, Maryland. And this told us all kinds of things about the Ice Age ecosystem in that time. But those kind of cave deposits, what are called fissure fills, don't just come from recent times. Some of them are very, very old, over 200 million years. And this is the case with the Cromwell Quarry, a fissure fill fossil site, God, say that 3 times fast, from South Gloucester, England, that preserves an ecosystem over 200 million years old. Animals from the Cromwell site are primarily lizard-like creatures called Sphenodontians, which seem to be all kinds of early insectivores and herbivores in the landscape, long-legged early crocodile relatives like this animal Terrestrisuchus, and a variety of different fishes and amphibians. But among those common Cromwell fossils was lurking one of the oldest dinosaur ancestors ever discovered, an animal known as Agnostfittus. Agnostfittus is not known from a single complete skeleton. It's known from more fragmentary fossils. An upper jaw bone, called the maxilla, is one of the most complete. Unfortunately, I can't show you that because it's under study currently by Dr. Sterling Nesbitt, an expert on early dinosaur evolution at Virginia Tech. We're really excited to see what Dr. Nesbitt manages to discover from the maxilla of Agnostfittus. This pink tag tells me that the maxilla, the upper jaw bone of Agnostfittus, is on loan to Dr. Nesbitt at Virginia Tech. So enjoy it, Sterling. But I do have some fossils of this early dinosaur ancestor to show off to you. This right here is a pelvic bone called the ilium from Agnostfittus. It has large, broad, flat surfaces for big muscle attachments and a very deep space where the head of the femur would go. So the thigh of Agnostfittus was very much a very solidly built structure that would have allowed the animal to stand very much upright. And that's one of the things that differentiates dinosaurs and their early ancestors from other reptiles, is a very upright posture, unlike the sprawling posture of lizard-like and crocodile-like reptiles. We actually have a couple of those Agnostfittus pelvic bones, the ilium, all of which have that deep hip socket. Another lovely bone we have from Agnostfittus. This is the humerus, or upper arm bone. Very lightly built structure. Doesn't suggest an animal that's bearing a lot of weight on its arms. So much like a lot of the early dinosaurs, dinosaur ancestor like Agnostfittus is probably spending most of its time on its back legs. Finally, this tiny little bone here, it has that very round surface on its underside. This is a single ankle bone, the astragalus of Agnostfittus. And this is another thing that makes dinosaurs and dinosaur ancestors what they are. The ankle in these animals is very solidly built, and it almost acts as a hinge so that the foot can basically just kind of rotate in 2 directions. It doesn't like go off side to side, which is something you see in a lot of the sprawling reptiles like crocodilians and their ancestors, and lizards and their ancestors. And so again, the features we see in Agnostfittus are indicative of an animal that was standing upright and had very hinge-like joints in its hind limb, which would have allowed it to move quickly and with a very upright posture. And one reason it's neat to talk about Agnostfittus right now is that early dinosaur ancestors, even older than it, Herresaurus and Eoraptor, have been in the news just this week. A new scientific study published by Dr. Christian Kammerer of the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences revealed an even older dinosaur ancestor than any of the ones I talked about earlier, called Konganophon. Konganophon, which is a fun name to say, is from the Triassic period of Madagascar. It doesn't have a whole lot of skeletal fossils with it. Probably should check what it actually has with it. Now, the skeleton of Konganophon is not particularly complete. It has an upper jawbone with some cone-shaped teeth that the authors suggest are good for cracking through insect exoskeletons, fragments of the upper arm, and then lots of the hind limb bones that show us that Konganophon was tiny. I mean, Agnostfittus is going to be an animal that's the size of a cat. It's pretty small, but not nearly as small as Konganophon, which is more like the size of a rat. This is a teeny tiny animal, the smallest of these early dinosaur ancestors that we've ever discovered in the Triassic period. And it seems to suggest that these earliest stages of the evolution of dinosaurs and their closest relatives in the fossil record, the flying pterosaurs, involved very, very tiny animals. So study of animals like Agnostfittus, Herresaurus, Eoraptor, and Conganophan all need to come together to give us the full picture of how dinosaurs got their start and how they split off into different pathways that would fill different roles in the ecosystem. Because later dinosaurs were giants and tiny, herbivores and carnivores, runners and plotters. And only by studying these earliest stages in the evolution of dinosaurs and their ancient relatives can we fully understand where they came from. When you look at Triassic rocks, if you didn't know what was going to happen later in the Jurassic and Cretaceous, you wouldn't know that dinosaurs, their relatives, were going to take over. You wouldn't know that at all. You'd think, oh, these are some really fast-running little critters, but who knows what they're going to do later. But they took over the world. That's basically what I have to say about that.